But you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, and now here's your host, Rich Barris.
All right, folks, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. All right, follow me on Getter at People's Pundit, on Twitter at People's_Pundit, on Truth Social at People's Pundit. Sign up on Locals, subscribe on YouTube. You know the deal. All right, kind of fizzled at the end with the public polling project, so share it far and wide. If you haven't contributed, we'd greatly appreciate it if you do so. We're almost there, and frankly, if we get a little bit more there, I'll probably do it anyway. But go ahead so we can get started. Share it with people that you think may have an interest. All right. I know everybody wants to talk about Georgia. I have to be very limited in what I talk about before it's published with CD Media, but I will give you a sneak peek and I will tell you what's going on. All right. There were some primaries yesterday, which are very important and we have to get into. All right. So let's do that. I have to tell you, I have a look, parents, you know how it is. That's why I'm dressed like this today. Child engagement. I got to play. My little girl has a play and I have to go see it. It's not at nighttime. It is. So we're going to do an hour today and I'm going to crunch a lot in that hour. All right. Locals, keep your eye out because you're going to get Georgia first. All right. All right. So what happened here in West Virginia? What happened was West Virginia lost a district because of the census. We knew that was going to happen, pitted incumbents against each other. All right. The question was whether or not the Trumpy endorsed candidate would win, and Alexander Mooney did win in West Virginia too. Not a surprise there. Trump is very popular in Appalachia. All right, has always been, and the election day vote has been coming through for these candidates, these Trump endorsed candidates, in a big way, which is something you need to keep in mind when we get to Georgia. All right. All right. In one, let's look at West Virginia. One, Carol Miller ran away with it. Now, Trump's endorsement regionally has a greater impact than it does elsewhere. The fact of the matter is what Laura calls the Messiah syndrome, okay, came into play in Nebraska. Trump endorsed Charles Herbster. The election day vote was big for him. Yet he still did fall shy of Jim Pillen, who won with only 33.8% of the vote. Herbster got 30%. In some of these plain states, all right, and in some areas around the country, and Georgia is going to be another test for Trump, in the Sun Belt, for instance. There's areas of the Sun Belt where he's super popular. Even North Carolina, for instance, Bud is going to romp what was a popular former Governor Pat McCrory for the nomination for U.S. Senate. But then there are other areas where, let's say, Florida, super popular. You get the Trump endorsement, you're going to win. Ask Ron DeSantis. All right. For those who don't know, Ron DeSantis was going against somebody who was extremely popular in the state of Florida. He was the establishment pick. He was well-funded, and DeSantis crushed him. All right. But then when you get to places like Georgia and plain states, it's a lot less. And why? Because Georgia has a lot of growth in the Atlanta metro area where there are a lot of overeducated white people. All right. And that is less Trumpy. All right. And you can see it in the Georgia poll, which I will talk about a little bit without giving away too much, that people are going to want to see. And there goes that thing. That's Decision Desk for you. That without giving away too much, that people really should wait for the CD Media to publish it. But all right, so Nebraska, we saw this happen. All right, although we did have some luck in other areas. So the 55-0, is now a done deal, right? So this is the way it goes. This is how it goes sometimes. Sometimes a president's endorsement or a former president's endorsement is going to go strongly. It's going to obviously make a huge impact. Look, some people I've been seeing on Twitter saying, J.D. Vance would have won anyway in Ohio. That's nonsense. It's total nonsense. You just don't understand the map. You don't know votes. You don't know numbers. I'm sorry. It's just true. You may be smart in other areas, but in this, it's not your forte. So just hang back. The bottom line is, when you look at J.D. Vance, he did well in Cincinnati. I would not take that away from him. He did well in Hamilton, where Cincinnati is. I would not take that away from him. That was his area, and he broke his butt for it. But from the Northwest in area like Wood County to the Northeast, Mahoning, Youngstown area, Trumbull to the north, no chance. The conservative vote would have split more, would have overtaken. There were first-time Trump Republicans that came out and voted in that area. That's why Republicans, for the first time, outvoted Democrats in Tim Ryan's home county, in his home damn area. Youngstown, Trump carried. Republicans get killed there. So this idea that, they would have won without it. Nonsense. The Southeast and the Appalachia area was butts up against the area where there were primaries last night. There are parts of Ohio that look more like West Virginia and West Pennsylvania than it does look like, Southwest Ohio. That's just true. And areas like that they worship the president. They love him. All right. So areas like the Plain States, Nebraska, really, because there has always been a split. And by the way, polls, you're going to see like Kansas, which are going to look closer. Can Republicans lose them? Yeah, but we've seen this before with Pat Roberts. Greg Orman was an independent. He was a Democrat. He was a freaking liberal. And he was running as an independent in an attempt to keep himself from being painted with Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and at that time, Harry Reid. Polls showed that it was very close. We had Roberts up by 11. He wound up running away with it. But Fox News and everybody else had it dead even. Orman even led in a few of those later polls. Why? Because in some of these plain states, there has always been a fight between what is a traditional Republican and what is a historical Republican. And you have somebody like Herbster, very America First, Nebraska, Kansas. These have very deeply rooted populist histories where Democrats were able to capitalize on that for a long time. So you get people like Tom Daschle in an otherwise very conservative area. The values are conservative. But those are values. When it comes to policy, there's your traditional wing, and I hate that they even call it traditional, because the truth is it never was the traditional wing. The Bushy wing of the Republican Party temporarily changed the Republican Party into something it never was. Donald Trump came around and started saying America first, fair trade, not free trade. And everybody seemed like he was talking tongues or something. He was speaking in tongues. That is the historic root of the Republican Party. It has always been populist. Historians like to blend that with the word progressive to trick people into thinking that they're the same thing, and they never were. The early senators popularly elected for the first time, the 17th Amendment in the log rolling deal with the 16th Amendment, probably the worst thing ever to happen to the Republic, because that's what changed it into a democratic republic. Those senators were Republican. Progressive? Not really. Progressive for their time, but not progressive as we know. They were populist. One man, one vote. Power to the farmers. America first. Trump didn't make that up. All right. So now, fast forward all these years, you have a stranglehold. Utah's another good example, although there's a Mormon dimension there. But you have this stranglehold by these, look, you would call them rhinos, probably, most people in the audience. And that would be accurate. They hold down the governor's mansions. They hold down the state legislatures. They're not typically conservative or populist anymore, but they're dug in like a tick. And without what Laura calls the Messiah syndrome, Herbster would have won. And we even saw this, although Trump did not endorse, we saw this in Ohio's governor's race as well. I'm obviously teeing up Georgia here. But clearly, the anti-incumbent vote is overwhelming in Nebraska and other areas. It just can't pull it off because you have like Brett Lindstrom in there, Teresa Theobotero, Breland Ridenour. Laura and I have felt strongly about stuff like this for a long time. You had no chance. Why the hell did you do that if you really were anti-incumbent? Without a doubt, if Charles Herbster was running against Jim Pillen, he would have pummeled Pillen. Pummeled. So I would argue, Team Trump, you got to look at the field a little bit, closer here. And this is, just being honest advice. You got to look at the landscape a little bit closer. Because some of this there's a lot of different dynamics at play. Some of these are like no candidates, even with Teresa and Breland in the race. I still think Charles Herbster would have won if Brett Lindstrom was not in the race. I think you have something like Jim Pillen, and Republicans will come to the table, obviously, and vote for Jim in the general election. But in a primary, the lion's share of that 33% would have went to Charles Herbster. And you have some of this in Georgia, too, where you have some of these other candidates who are in this race, and I know some of you actually like them. That's not the point. The point is, there's a question of viability. Doug Mastriano, a lot of America Firsters love Doug Mastriano. The Pennsylvania Republican Party right now is having a complete and total meltdown because they are afraid that Doug cannot win the general election. His internal polling getting leaked to left-wing outlets that showed the generic Republican candidate for governor is beating the generic Democratic candidate for governor. But if Doug Mastriano wins, he will lose by 7 points. I don't know. I haven't polled it. The QAnon stuff, not good. Not good. I just don't know until I poll it myself. I don't believe other people's polling. Honestly, the danger I see for many Republicans this cycle, as far as these nominations go, is that the America First candidate can win a new voter that the traditional Republican cannot. Pennsylvania's awfully white, all right, compared to some of these other areas. But when you look at places like Florida and Texas and California, where there are strong minority, especially Hispanics, they are not sold on traditional Republicans at this point. Nebraska, easy loss for America First, or I would say easy loss for the Republican ticket in general, because it doesn't really matter. Mastriano may be a different story. I'm not even, it's not the J6 stuff, the January 6th stuff that even gets me with Doug. It's the QAnon stuff. The voters of Pennsylvania have always been a little bit closer to the voters of Ohio when it came to our polling, where the social bias wasn't as bad, social desirability bias. They don't give a damn about J6. They don't. They don't care if Doug Mastriano was at the January 6th protest or not. They don't care what he had to say about election fraud. I'm telling you, they just don't care about that. But the QAnon stuff could hurt. That's just the truth. I've seen him in an interview with our good friend Don Smith, friend of the show. I strongly suggest you go and check it out. He acquitted himself extremely well. He is clearly filled with conviction. I'm not saying, that's not the point I'm trying to make. He's going to have to effectively argue the QAnon stuff in order to, Pennsylvania's a mess. You have the race for Senate. It's a total disaster. Mehmet Oz, endorsed by Donald Trump, not trusted by people like Jack Posobiec. However, Kathy Barnett, the candidate who put on a great debate performance, I was being bombarded yesterday after the Club for Growth endorsement I was being bombarded by people who pulled up a bunch of stuff about her as well. So it's like, it almost is never a perfect candidate. It's just that as of right now, Pennsylvania appears to be a total mess, and that's one of the Trumpiest states in the country. It's just unbelievable. Maybe if McCormick, who is a total hack, I'm sorry, he is a total Wall Street Mitch McConnell shill. Maybe if he didn't come in and muddy up the waters in a primary he really had no business running, some of this would have been able to be hatched out by now. In the end, the bottom line is, if Sean Parnell wasn't the victim of a smear campaign, horrible to use family court against a candidate. For those who have no experience with family court, it is probably the most, the allegations are probably, this is the area of law where allegations are probably the most embellished. You accuse your spouse or your former spouse in custody battles of horrendous stuff. I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of using family court to take out somebody. But Sean Parnell was obviously the America First candidate. And it's like Pennsylvania voters are forced to choose between sloppy seconds. For lack of a better word, excuse me for being crude. Parnell probably should have fought a lot more, but he put his kids first, and I get it. I'm putting mine first today by doing an hour. All right. Speaking of which, because we got a lot to go through, let me get my trusty laptop up here. All right. It's like in Georgia, it always does this to me. 40 and above men. But we are good. Some of this new digital stuff we're doing, I'll tell you, man, we can reach people that I know nobody else is reaching. Which brings me to my point here. Let's just state the obvious. Kemp has the easiest path, okay? But we are not going to find him near 60% like everybody else, or even in the mid-50s. That's not happening. There are still a lot of undecideds, though. Here's the deal, and here is what I told Todd Wood the headline is. Period, flat out. Kemp's lead is entirely... Now, he leads in all vote intention, but how big the lead is what matters. Team Purdue is not trying to get Kemp, on the first ballot here. They're trying to force him into a runoff. I will tell you this. If Brian Kemp is forced into a runoff, he likely cannot beat, very likely, highly likely, he cannot beat David Perdue. Why? Because this is the least Trumpy, most moderate, most Atlanta Metro that you're going to get. In a runoff, it will be more basey, and Kemp is fighting for every vote right now to get to 50 plus 1. And I don't think he can do it in a runoff. I think his ceiling in a runoff is probably 47, 48%. It would be close. Well, it would likely be close. It could not be, honestly, because many of these voters just aren't going to vote for him. Those who are most certain to vote, he is the weakest. His entire 50-plus support is built among those who say they have not voted yet but plan to vote early before Election Day. Among those who voted already, Kemp is below 50%. If we were to count the votes right now, he's not going to make it. That is the beacon for the anti-Kemp forces. All right, that is the hope, whatever you want to call it. That is the great white hope for the anti-Kemp forces. If we were to total up the vote that has been cast right now, Kemp will fall short. The Election Day vote, he falls short. His entire 50 plus is among those who say, no, I haven't voted yet, but I'm going to early. And that is his strongest supporter. They also happen to be among the least likely to actually cast the vote. Obviously, those who voted already are the most likely because it's done. The second most likely by far are Election Day voters. Now, I think there will be quite a bit of early vote cast in the state of Georgia. Kemp very much needs to run up the numbers in that chunk. The ones who have not voted yet, but plan to vote. He is the weakest in the North and in the coastal counties. He is not strong. I don't know what the Atlanta Journal-Constitution is talking about. Again, these people. It's your state. Why is an outsider better than you at this? It is your state. If anybody was better in Florida than me, I'd be like ashamed. Thankfully, that hasn't happened yet. The fact of the matter is, the Georgia hometown boys haven't gotten as close as we. So I know we're going to be an outlier here, but I'm all right with that. I'm comfortable with that. I'm fairly confident, and more than fairly, I'm confident in the work we have done. Area type, which is what the Atlanta Journal-Constitution is choosing to focus on in their article, is not good enough. You need to nest area with region. Kemp is not the strong. High turnout in rural areas is not going to help Brian Kemp get to 50 plus. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. And you will see that soon. High turnout in rural areas is bad freaking news for Brian Kemp. That is where there could be a real uh-oh moment. And by the way, polls also showed DeWine running away with the nomination in Ohio. So I feel, again, rather confident that some of these polls are overestimating incumbent support because they have been. How could I put this? Oh, by the way, the Secretary of State race is a dogfight. I love polling races like this. I mean, it just doesn't get much closer. It's close, really close, with a lot still undecided. That's the truth. The voters in Georgia, Republican primary voters in Georgia, are the governor's race is the most decided. But there's still a chunk out there. And it is also true that Kemp started stronger and fizzled as time went on. Right, Laura, are you there? Kemp started stronger. In the first day or two, I was like, this race is over. And then he started to fizzle. You know, not fizzle. I mean, he collapsed, right? I mean, he collapsed.
Sure did.
Like, you know what? I'm gonna like hang tight and wait a week, and I think I'm gonna decide. I don't know what that is there. The AJC is like talking about small crowd sizes with his bus tour and everything. I don't know. Something happened though, where at least could these people decide, I'm just going to go with Kemp? Yes. Like I said, it's an easier path for Brian Kemp, much easier. It's just that it's not over because the biggest supporter he has not voted yet, and they're taking a second look at the ground, what's going on the ground. All right. The race obviously for Senate is over. Do I have to go through that? I mean, no. And then something else I want to show you is that in the vote history for 2020, we were almost dead on as far as who did you vote for, Trump or Biden. There are some people now who just obviously did not vote for Donald Trump. They're basically ashamed to admit that they voted for Joe Biden, but it still nevertheless was very close to what the actual result was in Georgia. Polls tend to overstate third-party support. They do. People say some other candidate and it's like 3%. You know that didn't happen. Those are Biden voters who don't want to admit they voted for Joe Biden because the country is in shambles. Let's be real. All right. That's an objective statement. That is not a partisan statement. That is an objective statement. The country is in shambles. Donald Trump is thrashing Joe Biden in the state of Georgia. I don't know what people are talking about, showing these tight little margins between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. We have it basically even with Joe Biden slightly ahead, which is what the official vote is, and yet Donald Trump is thrashing Joe Biden. So I don't know where people are getting this from. We also think we're probably a little too young, meaning that this electorate is That's what, by the way, is also taking a little bit longer. We're doing something a little bit different this time. There will be different weight variables. There will be the registered voter weight variable, where you will see Joe Biden's overall approval rating with everybody. There will be likely primary voters and then likely midterm voters. So there is a difference. To put out a poll that shows the primary result and then Joe Biden's approval in the state among that same group of voters is just not right. That wouldn't be fair to Joe Biden, because the primary vote is going to be less favorable to Joe Biden than the overall registered voter universe. That's just true. Just as I would say it wouldn't be fair to either candidate, either Republican or generic Democrat, to use the registered voter universe to reject the generic ballot. There are going to be likely midterm voters, likely primary voters, and the registered voter universe. But voters in the state of Georgia think something is seriously wrong. I'll tell you that. And I will tell you to watch the North. If Kemp has a reversal in fortune and can get above 50 easier, it'll be because those Northern Republicans came home to him, I expect. But the problem is that those areas border along with the Carolinas and then up and in where? What region? Right. Especially in the northwest of Georgia. Because they're outside the ATL spectrum at that point. The ATL metro spectrum. And they start to actually move into Trump territory. They border along Trump territory. In fact, when Perdue and Loeffler lost the runoff, the one area of the state that was rather Trumpy and came out was the one area where Donald Trump went. It was northwest, the northern counties. They did come out for Perdue and Loeffler, where the rest of the state did not. And then when you get into the southern counties, they border up against what state? Right, Trump country. So if Kemp wins and gets above 50%, it'll be because of the educated voter in the ATL area and in Savannah. Even in central Georgia, he's actually stronger than I suspected he would be in central Georgia. It is those, so once you get, once you get closer to Florida, it starts to get worse for him. Once you get closer to South Carolina and Appalachia, it gets worse. All right. So he needs disproportionate turnout in the Atlanta metro area counties and among Republicans, educated Republicans, and he needs disproportionate turnout in Savannah. Outside of that, if it's a rural romp, and they could absolutely keep Kemp below 50. Now, there's still a good deal of undecided, and it's just easier for Kemp to get to 50 than it is for him not. I'll say that. But yeah, I mean, guys, right. What state butts up against Northwest Georgia? Tennessee, Alabama, right? And then you're starting to get into closer to Trump's area. And then in southern Georgia, it butts up against northern Florida, where everywhere outside of the capital is super Trumpy. I even think that Kemp is probably going to get crushed in southwest Georgia. It probably is. We're not crushed, but he'll be pulled down. Again, the problem is the Messiah complex. There are people, and you can't, honestly, I'm not surprised. There are people, for instance, who won't let go. And let's see if I can give you some indication here. Who won't let go of like Taylor, even Tom Williams, for crying out loud. I mean, they're all taking a little bit here and there. Perdue is somebody who is still viewed by some Trump voters as, not the best option. They're not in love with him. There is also some concern that David Perdue can't do as well against Stacey Abrams as Brian Kemp. And I think it's only right that I point out that both candidates will beat Stacey Abrams. So, I mean, would it be closer with David Perdue? The polling indicates right now that it would be, but I'm not sure that that's true, because so much of this support for Kemp, it's not like they're both doing fantastically different among Republican voters and independent voters. It's this chunk of Democrats who approve of Brian Kemp's performance as governor, who say they're going to vote for him. They're not going to vote for him. That is not going to happen. They're going to vote for Stacey Abrams. I'm telling you, that's going to happen. That is, polling can sometimes, especially this early, can sometimes really mislead you. I think in the end, Purdue would probably do better with the Republican base than Brian Kemp would. There are Republicans, about 20-something percent, 25% in the state of Georgia who can't stand this man. They can't stand him, and I could see them leaving their ballots empty for Brian Kemp. They may tell me, the pollster right now, well, I'd pick Kemp. But they may not. Just mark my words, man. Mark my words. I'm telling you, I've seen this before. And I can see it happen. I can. I'm just, so what does it look like? Maybe a 2-point difference right now. Maybe Kemp leads Abrams by 7, but Purdue leads Abrams by 5. I don't know what it's going to turn out to be just yet. Close. Somewhere along that. But in the end, Purdue is going to beat Stacey Abrams. Okay? Even with all that, I see some of your comments. Even with all that, guys, Biden is over. Georgia is over Biden and the Democratic agenda. They're over it, guys. Trump is Joe Biden in the state of Georgia right now. Okay? I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll try to get to some questions that I can answer before the show's up. I know it's a quick one today, but I got to do that I got to get there. I got to be there for my princess. And then I got to get back and finish, putting together stuff that's ready for a CD to publish this. All right. I will note, because we will be an outlier, I will note that we were right in the Georgia runoffs and everybody else was wrong. I know there are others out there who claim that they were kind of right, but the truth is we were the only ones to show that David Perdue would do a little bit better than Kelly Loeffler, yet nonetheless, they would both lose, fall just shy, and the reason is because turnout in central and southern coastal Georgia counties were going to be low because the Trumpy voter was pissed. So just remember that, all right? But again, with all seriousness, it's obviously the case that Brian Kemp has the easier path. But it certainly isn't. I don't think this is a done deal. I really don't. Can it be? Go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to say, it may be an easier path, but it doesn't necessarily mean the only path.
Laura, look, and especially when you talk about sampling errors, I could easily be overestimating the educated Republican voter in metro Atlanta area. And he's at like 48%. And that's it. That's all he's getting. We'll just have to see what turnout looks like. And while I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the early vote. And in the early vote, I'll tell people this. Hold on. Already voted, absentee ballot, or early vote. Okay. I don't know why it does that. Every time I update it, in the early vote, he's at 45. What has been banked right now, I'll just be honest. I'll just be upfront with that. I'm trying to be careful, though. I don't want to tell people too much before it's out. It's not right. But he's not at 50, Laura. In people who have voted already, he is at 45%. Okay? On election day, in the election day vote, it's close, real close, but below. All of it comes from people, Laura, who say they haven't voted yet, but they're going to vote early. That's where he is the strongest, and he is above 50. He's in the mid-50s. But what happened over the course of 4 days, right, roughly, is that election day voter was like, because he was above 50 with the election day vote for a while. He was always below 50 with people who voted already, but he was He was always in the 40s, close. I think the highest he got over the days was like 47 or something. But the election day vote started out where that's why I thought it was over. Because if you're going to pull him down, you're going to pull him down on election day, right?
Yes. That would be the
But
best, most
that would be
opportune
the
time.
best, right? That
Yeah.
would be the Trumpiest. The Trumpiest vote so far has been the election day vote. So it doesn't surprise me at all to see that he was weaker in election day vote than early vote. But people who voted already was a lot weaker than I thought. It was all coming from people who said, I'm going to vote early, but I haven't yet. And then the election day vote went from slightly over 50 to bump, 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 bump over the course of days. And that's people going, I don't know, maybe I will vote for David Perdue. Now, whether David Perdue can hold that momentum, he had maybe that some of that. I don't know that much came from those debates. Otherwise, it wouldn't have started like that, Laura. It wouldn't have started that strong for Kemp. Maybe it was the state. He's got a lot of people in that state.
Well, yeah. There are a
Steve
lot of people that are a
Cortez
little
went there.
bitter at Purdue, but this is my question.
But I mean, they had a lot of people campaigning for him over the last few days, over the last week. There's been a bus tour, But go ahead.
But it's like this, a lot of people may be still bitter at Purdue, but when push comes to shove on election day, sometimes they end up.
Yeah, it's difficult to predict,
Yeah,
but
and then it
do
becomes
they
like,
eventually?
oh, okay. But either way, like you said, they both beat Abrams, and Abrams is just going to have to get over it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's definitely Republicans out there who are like, can David Perdue beat Stacey Abrams? And as a pollster, you can't just like stop the interview and be like, oh no, let me tell you, they're both gonna. That's not legitimate. That's how other people work. You just let it go, but you listen. And listening, you can definitely hear his concern that Kemp is a stronger candidate. And I'm telling you, I have seen some of this before where like the incumbent who has a challenge looks like he's stronger. And it's because of this like BS, this independent moderate voter that never votes anyway. And then this Democratic voter who thinks they're crossing over, or sometimes it's a Republican, crossover. That says, I kind of like this Democrat. But then at the end of the day, they're both way below 10% in crossover. It's like 5 to 8. They cancel each other out. And they get 90+% of their base. And Abrams is not going to lose 15, 16% of her base. That's not happening. They are not going to vote over over Stacey Abrams for Brian Kemp. It's not going to happen, man. It's not going to happen. Especially since Georgia's like 30% African-American vote. You think Brian Kemp's going to pull that much of the African-American vote away from Stacey Abrams? No. Nope. Not happening. Not happening. I'm not a gambling man. I would make that bet. I would. No. Brian Kemp? He's not that guy. Even Herschel Walker isn't pulling that kind of African-American support from Raphael Warnock. No way. By the way, Walker's consistently leading Raphael Warnock. I don't know where some of these people get these Warnock +5s. Do you not know how to weight a freaking poll? I mean,
No, they don't.
I mean, this is not. This is what, the third poll now? It may be a little bit smaller of a lead. I don't know. Maybe not. When all's said and done, I can't wait to see how the Secretary of State race works out, because Heiss is he's putting up a fight. I mean, these two, they're really close. And there's still a lot of Republicans, almost 4 in 10, that say, I don't know yet. I don't know. It's a tough one for me, and I don't know what I want to do. Yeah, so there we have it. Again, Trump's lead over Biden's going to be big. Big. I mean, big. Trump's barely losing it. You know why? Because Biden's losing so many of his voters. This we see nationally, too. Biden is losing so many of his voters to someone else. There's also, like, for instance, if you voted for, and this isn't totally done yet, but let's say, where is it? Thinking back to the 2020. If you voted for Joe Biden, then Biden loses probably 8% roughly nationally. It's like 8 to 12% he loses to Donald Trump. He's losing almost that right now, he's only maintaining less than 3/4 of the vote who voted for him. About 15% roughly say that they would vote for someone else. There is a big someone else in Georgia, which is a little bit funny to me because they don't vote third party. But that could be because how far we are out right now, right? If you voted for Donald Trump, come on, where are you? I hate how this does this. If you voted for Donald Trump, Trump is losing less than 2% to Joe Biden. Again, we see this everywhere. And less than half of those who say someone else. Trump is keeping almost 90% of those who voted for him. And by the way, this is what happens in early polling. That someone else is going to come home. The ones who will switch over and vote for Biden, that can happen. And they're more likely to hold fast for their changing vote than the someone else's are to remain for third party, especially in a state like Georgia. That's not happening. They're going back to Donald Trump, and he's going to be in the 90s. Joe Biden would not be. This is not a close race at all. This is Georgia would not be in play. And let me be as close. Let me be as unequivocal as I possibly can. The state of Georgia would not be in play if Donald Trump ran against Joe Biden right now. It's gone. This is a gone race. This is done. Yeah, Ray, good question. That's statistics. There's always somebody, even in a situation like this. That's the way this works. There is always somebody who say, I voted for Donald Trump, but now I'd vote for Joe Biden. And by the way, it would be the case like I voted for Mitt Romney, but now I voted for John McCain. Okay, here's a good example. I voted for Barack Obama, but now I'm voting for Mitt Romney. There were people who did that. Far more people who said I voted for John McCain, and now I'm voting for Barack Obama. Nevertheless, there were still people who voted for John McCain, who voted for, but then switched their vote to Barack Obama in 2012. Was it many? No, small, probably something around 1.8%, 2%. But it still happens because that's stats for you. That's just that's the nature of this business. The lion's share, however, were voters who said I voted for Obama in 2008. Now I'm going to vote for Mitt Romney. The problem was for Mitt Romney and the establishment Republican Party in general, they're so bland and so uninspiring. They're so duplicitous and lackluster that he was missing, millions and millions of working class voters, and they just did not come out. Are you surprised? Look at Mitt Romney. Look at him. The truth is, the polls were somewhat right in 2012, but completely for the wrong reasons. They did not predict why Barack Obama actually won. He did not get the electorate that he had in 2008, like they were claiming he would get, something close to that. That's why Republicans were involved in the unskew the polls. Remember that? In the end, they were wrong. You don't wait for party ID, which is something people are doing now. Back in 2012, when the polls were skewed badly Democratic in the electorate, Republicans were arguing, well, you didn't wait for party. And then, now people are constantly waiting for party or just leaving an inherent panel bias like YouGov and Morning Consult without using other demographic variables to correct for that. But in any event, it's funny how we change the standard as time goes on. 1 year, as long as it's good for the Democrats, good for the goose, good for the good for the gander, then it's all right to flip-flop on methodology, I guess. But in any event, what happened, he did not get that electorate. Two things happened. One, African Americans, particularly African American women, voted in droves for him when the poll said that he may lose some of that. He did not. And then he did better with working class whites. Barack Obama did not do bad for a Democrat at all with working class whites, which is why he would win Youngstown, Mahone County, Wood County, Trumbull County, That's why he did that. 31 pivot counties in the state of Iowa. White as it gets, folks. 31. Mitt Romney lost. Donald Trump won. It's just, and think about that. It's just an enormous amount. An enormous amount of counties. Barack Obama carried 31 of them, the largest out of any state, the largest number. There was in a state, the state of Iowa. In both 2008 and 2012, Mitt Romney didn't flip a single one. Did he do damage in, chip away his margins? Yeah, but that's why he went from, McCain losing it by 12 to only losing it by 6. Oh, only losing it by 6. And then, then Donald Trump comes around, flips 31 of those counties around, carries the state by 10 points, 16-point shift. And these idiots don't seem to think anything significant about that. It's unbelievable. Barack Obama did better among working class whites because these are not Republican voters. I bet you, Laura, they would vote for Barack Obama over Mitt Romney right now again.
Oh, all
I
day.
bet you
please.
anything.
I would vote
anything.
for Barack Obama over Mitt Romney.
She's like,
Oh, Lord have mercy. And that goes to show you how much I don't like
Can we keep
Mitt
a
Romney.
secret? Probably I would too. Well, because
Think
you know
about
where
it,
Barack
though.
Obama, you know where Barack Obama stands. Mitt Romney is just a total fraud.
He's a
He's a total fraud.
spineless baby. He's just everything is. He's just so jelly. Like somebody else
he's so
wrote
jelly.
in
He's so jelly.
locals. They said he's just jelly
He's
of
so jelly.
Trump because he couldn't pull off. He blamed
Yep.
his wealth for the reason why he
Yep.
lost, and it was like so funny because almost he's pretty high on the wealthy chart, right? I don't know how high Donald Trump is. Like what
Donald
number
Trump
he
blows
ranks
him
in.
away. Donald Trump blows him away in wealth.
Yeah, but
Like,
he
Mitt Romney's a
exactly.
wealthy guy, but he makes Mitt Romney look like a pauper.
Exactly. And so it's just like it like totally exposed. It's just
Well,
a
that
loser.
wasn't the reason, was it?
Yeah. It's like stop being jelly, Mitt. You're a loser. Just get over it. Here's the color green. Put your wardrobe all green and call it a day.
Yeah. The difference is Donald Trump, his son called him a blue collar billionaire. Donald
Yeah.
Trump was like not an elitist, like that. And I think that a lot of those voters like the idea that somebody that is a part of that class rejected it. And I think that is a part of his connection to voters that a lot of the media, they'll never understand it because they can't. They don't live that life. I call them cubicle critters. They have never peeked outside. Like on CNN, Larry Schweikert, hiding behind a different Twitter handle. He can't because he's been booted from Twitter so many times. So he's got to put something else up. But basically, he had brought up their segment when they had polled and they were shocked that abortion didn't impact the vote at all. It's not going to help Democrats, as I suggested it would not. But also, they were like 55%. That's 55%. The economy was the number one issue going away, and 55% said that Biden's policies were hurting them. And they said, that's insane. What's insane is that you're so out of touch and stupid that you don't realize that's the obvious result. Like, look at the CPI out today. These idiots are trying to spin that the CPI is positive somehow. Well, it slowed down. It wasn't 8.5. It was 8.3. You stupid fools. It still exceeded expectations and it's still rising at an incredibly ridiculous pace. That is more than 4 times the average pace under Donald Trump. Doesn't anybody understand that? Of course his policies are hurting. You had Katie Porter, the former representative, shocked about how it's personally hurting her now. You're stunned the policies you have advocated for your entire life are hurting you. This is how stupid they are. Democrats have always been economically illiterate. always. Except for Bill Clinton. But he wasn't exactly a genius. He just realized that the Bush administration did not do sufficient damage to the Reagan policy platform, that he might have been the benefactor of what was thought to have been a recession. It was a weak recession. He was the benefactor of that. It worked to his benefit to get elected, even though he never won a majority of the vote. He was only elected because of Ross Perot. But what at least he was smart enough to understand was that his policies didn't do it. His lack of messing with the economy and fiscal policy allowed the environment to continue to foster growth, which led .com boom, all of that. Democrats in his own party would have preferred him to regulate during that period of time even more than he did. And to the point where I've seen, a lot of good research that suggested if Bill Clinton would have listened to members of his own party, he would have stifled the .com boom. He would have. He could have heard it. Is what it is. Unfortunately, the worst policy economically the Clinton administration allowed to go through, and he gets the blame for this, and it's not really fair. It was George Herbert Walker Bush's fault. The trade deals. He did bend over for China, but Bush was already doing that. So all he did was kind of allow NAFTA and many of these other policies to go forward. I mean, that's the truth. Those were Bush era agenda items and that ultimately led, if you look during the Clinton administration, manufacturing is still doing very well under him because it hadn't taken an impact yet. We did a whole study on this, looking specifically at the state of Indiana on People's Pundit Daily years ago. And it was very clear how long it took for some of these policies from NAFTA and the WTO to kick in. And Clinton was able to kind of like ride it out, but that was his major mistake, was that he allowed those things to go through. And by the time we got to young Bush, it really started to hurt it. And that's what we saw, Laura, where we're from. Where I'm from, for instance, there was this factory where they built storm doors and windows. And anyone who was ever having an issue, and immigration, by the way, also took a toll during that point because, and Laura, you remember the 7-Elevens and Wawa parking lots at 6:30 in the morning, right? So Dylan and all the rest of them, it was a lot harder for him to maintain, his trade, HVAC, Gary's, electric, carpentry, right? All of them. It was much harder for them to maintain decent livings because it was very easy for somebody else to just pull over, before, but yeah, so keep an eye out. Hold on one second. Not at all in detail. Don't worry. But yeah, basically, more like a change that Bush allowed to happen. By the time his son got in, it started having an impact, and then that was the end of the story. You know what I mean? And somebody over time, Barack Obama did, even Joe Biden did. All of these people during that time period campaigned on stopping it because it was clear what was happening, but nobody ever did. So that's why, states like Indiana, when you looked at the primary, and that was the point of that article, Cruz really never had any chance. Despite he didn't, because that was the issue that mattered most to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it was just funny.
All right.
Wait, real quick, did you see that in the private area?
No, let me see. Is it it's a message or is there time? Heard some concerns that Barnett can't win the general election in PA if she's nominated. Is that really true in such a pro-Republican cycle like this? That's a really good question. And that's what I'm talking about, because we do have a few minutes. If you got one or two more, Laura, I'll answer them.
Okay.
Without polling, I don't want to answer that. Same thing with Doug Mastriano, because it is such a pro-Republican cycle. Jim Lee does fantastic polling in the state of Pennsylvania. You know, the generic Republican has a big lead. Mastriano, I think, is a little different than Barnett. Here's the one thing that did concern me, and I tweeted it, or didn't concern me, but made me, I thought I killed that. Sorry about that. But she took the Club for Growth endorsement, and, messaging matters. Where's Market Site? Let me pull up Market Site real quick. She took the Club for Growth endorsement. I'm not sure I would have touted it. I mean, maybe I would have taken it, but not been huge touting it, because without a doubt, guys, and I'll pull it up right now, Pennsylvania is a pro-tariff state. They are not I even have the NAFTA questions in here and everything. I don't think it would be enough to hurt Barnett. She's very impressive. I don't know where this idea is. Did anybody show any polling that shows she would be beat? I mean, since the debate, I mean, any polling somebody might have showed you that showed Barnett couldn't win a general most assuredly would have been done before that debate, which means she had no name recognition. She spent under $200,000 in ads when McCormick and Oz spent tens of millions. So, I mean, that's a matter of name recognition. It's not a matter of unelectability, right? I guess that would be how I'd answer that, jury. I don't think there's polling out right now that could convincingly make the case that Kathy Barnett cannot win a general election. I don't think that's true at all. Do I think that Mehmet Oz is the strongest candidate in the general election? Without a doubt, guys. He's going to do better in Montgomery, Delaware, Chester, Berg. He's going to. And he's still going to get very high numbers in the T. I mean, in the conservative areas of the T. He's going to do well in those areas. I think other candidates, McCormick would get crushed in some of those areas. I don't know if there's a good. I don't think I see any polling that would convince me that Barnett would be a liability. But I do think it's rather obvious that Mehmet Oz would do better in the counties that surround southeastern Pennsylvania. Okay. All right. Tariffs. Here are tariffs. Do you support or oppose the use of tariffs as leverage in trade negotiations with other nations? I mean, it's more than 2-1. 47.6 support, 20.5 oppose, another 31.9 were unsure, but in truth, they do support it. I mean, we've been down this road before. In July, the U.S.-Mexico trade agreement, did you look at how much they supported Donald Trump replacing NAFTA with the USMCA? I mean, this is a Trumpy fair, excuse me. This is a very Trumpy fair trade state. And if you return to the establishment version of Republican politics position on trade and immigration, you're going to squander these gains. What is the ratio of Rhino to MAGA in Georgia? It's about half and half. I do. I think that's about the case. And again, keep your eye out for the CD media poll, and you'll see why I mean that. It's probably more MAGA. It's just there are MAGA people who are concerned about voting for Purdue. There's a couple of reasons for that, but you'll see. How low can Biden go, especially with the markets tanking now? Low. If Georgia's any indication, low. Let's look at it like this. Wait till you see his approval in Georgia when we release the CD media poll. Wait till you see his approval in Georgia, and then remember that Georgia was basically even. All right, so nationally, if it was about 3 points plus more Biden than Georgia, think about how low he can go. He can go pretty low. Now, this is why I always thought some of the polls for Trump were BS, because we're in a country that is deeply divided, and you're going to have people, whether they like Joe Biden or not, just hold on. The problem for Democrats, and you don't see it that much in Georgia because it's just not that big of a Hispanic population. The problem you have for Democrats is that they are collapsing among Hispanics. And we don't know where that's going to ultimately end up, because they may say they disapprove of the job Joe Biden is doing, but they are not going to vote for a GOP donor candidate. They're not. They'll either not vote or they'll go with the devil they know. And that's why I told you the best thing that could happen in Texas is for Cisneros to beat Henry Cuellar. Because that would be a signal to them in South Texas that is the end of the values Democrat. Remember what I told you before about abortion earlier this week? White women and black women are who gets abortions in this country. Hispanic women and other minority women who aren't white or who aren't African American, black, they don't get abortions in this country. Not comparatively. They get them, of course, everybody. But comparatively, it is disproportionately black women at about 38%, white women about 34%. The rest is other minority women, you know? How much do you think the vote yesterday, $40 billion, is going to hurt the Republicans going forward? Stupid. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I have a candidate in California, majority Hispanic district. Let me read it. You want to know how much it hurts? I'm going to read what I sent to David, Laura. This is a voter. By the way, a Democrat who would have considered voting Republican. All you politicians can off. You're all, and you don't give a about us little people that pay all of the taxes. I'm never voting again, and it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican. You're all dirty. Follow the money that donates to you. Good job, Kevin McCarthy. Good job. That's a suburban white woman, by the way, who's been voting Democrat, who was thinking about voting Republican. That was her reaction to your vote. Good job. Keep putting the flags in your handles, idiots. Keep putting the Ukrainian flags in your handle. It's so fun. It's so fun. You're so stupid. It's frustrating. Look at the numbers, by the way, with Rasmussen today. They came out with congressional favorability ratings. They have somebody like Kevin McCarthy a little bit higher than us, but generally, they have almost mirrored the public polling project. More importantly, they mirrored why they're unpopular. Both Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy. Because your own party hates your guts. At least with Democratic leaders, they like their leaders. They feel represented. Republicans don't feel represented. And Democrats will always have an advantage. Always. I'm talking about a governing advantage. Because they are backed by their populists. They're backed by them. Republicans are not. They react to their voters. Republican leadership does not. I'm so glad somebody brought that up. It's going to have a major impact on those 17% of liberals who say they'll vote for Donald Trump over Joe Biden, but they will never vote Republican on the generic ballot. I wonder why they would vote for Trump, but they would not vote for you, GOP donor class. I wonder why in this district that I just read this comment from, I'm just going to say it, David Giglio leads with Hispanic voters. Only about a point less than Donald Trump, while they're Democrat +6 on the generic ballot. It's so obvious. The problem is money. That's the problem. It's money and it's interests. I don't think anybody needs to hear me tell them that. They don't want to get behind this guy because they don't give a damn. They talk all out of their butts about, I want to win the Hispanic vote. I want to appeal to these voters. No, they don't. Donations to the NRCC matter to them more than whether or not they appeal to Hispanic voters in the 13th congressional district. That is the God's honest truth. Their candidate has been on more than one occasion been referred to as what? The plantation owner. That's what they think of him. Wait till they hear some of the comments come out of his mouth, because Democrats will absolutely drop them. White college women. That's last time I looked, I think in the 2019. Now remember, with the abortion surveillance, that's a good question, Jim. With the abortion surveillance, remember, it's not fully accurate. Why? Because a huge state, speaking of California, doesn't want to respond to the abortion surveillance program. They won't report widespread granular data such as ethnicity and reasons. They don't want to comply with it because they have so many abortions. They don't want the country to know about it, I can only imagine. But the economic reasons come from black women who have abortions. The reasoning among white girls, sadly, I want to go to college. It would disrupt my life right now. I don't want to ruin my figure. You think I'm kidding? So, on the geographic question, I can't answer that with confidence because there's a lot of liberal states that refuse. California's, of course, the biggest one, but they're not alone. The abortion surveillance data is only 40 states, I think. I'd have to go and look for sure, but it's tragic. Liberal states refuse to comply. That's the truth. And this rape and incest claim drives me nuts. Less than 0.5% of abortions are conducted because of incest. Less than 1% are conducted because of rape. That is not the reason that women get abortions. 2 out of 10 pregnancies in this country result in termination. 2 out of 10. It's unbelievable, isn't it? It's really astonishing. When you really start to digest those numbers, it can make you mildly nauseous. Because everything that you hear is just a load. Elizabeth Warren wants to talk about rape and incest, but the truth of the matter is you could say, okay, fine, let's outlaw abortion, except for in the case of rape and incest. And they would say, no, that's not good. No. Well, why do you keep bringing it up? Oh, the vast majority, 52%, that's not a vast majority, but okay. 52% are conducted before 12 weeks. That's fantastic. So even the 10% that are late, if we committed 657,000 abortions in 2019, ladies and gentlemen, that's like 66,000 late-term pregnancies that were terminated. Late-term meaning little baby. It's a baby. Got kids? Sickening, man. Sickening. And this is coming from somebody who used to be rather pro-choice. They're radical. Oh, yes, Jay. Our abortion laws are absolutely radical. Absolutely. And it may actually be lower than that now. I don't know. As far as the rape and incest, but we only have, It's always lagging data. I wouldn't be surprised if it is lower now. But yeah, so there it is. Well, let's end it on a good note. Keep your let's end it on a good note. Let's not, because it's already 1:12. Let's not end it on abortion. Let's end it on Georgia. Keep your eyes peeled. The governor's race will be out first. Okay. And what, Laura? Sounds like you want to say something.
Oh, no. I'm just making sure.
Okay.
I was going to say bye when the time came.
You could go to cdm.press. Just keep an eye on my social media, and when it does come out, I'm going to do, of course, my little threads on it, but I will give you the links to it. But it isn't all going to come out at once, okay? The governor's race will be done with it first. So keep your eye out. And again, I don't mind being the outlier. You know, it is what it is. But
Ray wants to know which one will be out first.
Georgia. The governor's top ticket will be out first. All right. And then there will be three different electorates that we're really looking at here. You have the registered voter universe that will report things like, Joe Biden's approval rating, the 2020 electorate kind of vote, right? And then there will be midterm voters and then primary voters. They really are three different electorates. It's not, we don't think it's right to put out one sample size and pretend that everyone who's going to vote in the general election in November is going to somehow cast a vote in this primary. That's just not true. That's not the case. But yeah, I mean, it's a really nice big sample size. For Republicans alone, it's like 800 or something, I think, right? Something like that. I mean, it's big. Close to it. We were shooting for the stars. In the beginning, like I said, check out the early vote. Another thing to really look at is we ask people whether or not they're going to vote in the Republican or Democratic primaries. Check out the results of that and compare it to the early vote so far, what we see with the early vote, because I think we're definitely picking up on what we see in the early vote itself. All right. So again, creativedestructionmedia.com or cdm.press, and you'll see it on social when it's out. All right. I'm going to kick rocks. I will see you when? Tomorrow.
Friday.
Right? Friday. Yeah, I know, but I got to do something. I will see you Friday. Noon Eastern Standard Time. I'll be able to talk about Georgia a lot more. All right. So we'll go over it in much more detail by Friday. Okay. So this was like a little sneak peek, but by Friday, we'll be able to discuss really more in depth what we saw and, what we think it means. All right. All right, folks, I'm out. Don't forget to follow us on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com, and the Public Polling Project. Let me just give you a little bit of an update. We're really close. Share it far and wide. Let's get this thing done. All right. And then hopefully next month, we're going to have somebody who kind of helping us get it, get the word out, which will take, I'm trying to take a lot of the burden off of you guys. That would be great if we could do that. And so it would definitely be every month if we were able to do this. What else did I add, Laura? UFOs. I did. I add UFOs because next week there'll be hearings on UFOs for the first time since 1970. It will be big news. So we had room. I threw it on. So that makes UFOs, abortion, greatest enemy, all these annual. I can't believe it's been over a year already. 5 years from now, we're going to look back and we're going to say we have all of this annual, the Gallup World Poll, Laura. Like they ask certain things once a year and they have years and years of data. One day we will have that, folks. Isn't that cool? One day we will have that. All right, before I cry him out.
All right.
Don't forget, Friday, noon Eastern Standard Time. See you soon. Keep an eye on CD Media.
How much you wanna up it? That I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night. Just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit.